Sponsored by New Orleans Distillers, creators of fine spirits and liqueurs. Through dedication to science, art, and passion, blends of tradition and flavor emerge. For you, always locally crafted. New Orleans Distillers, classically Southern.
Tonight, from the Labor Department, U.S. job numbers were down. But the good news, it's National Donut Day. That and more tonight on Wall Street Wrap-Up. Hi, and welcome to Wall Street Wrap-Up, and I hope your week went well. I'm Andre Laborde. Our goal is bringing Wall Street to your street. For today, Friday, June the 4th, 2021, and to get you ready for the events ahead. We've got a great show for you this evening, so stick around. Tonight, we'll be talking with William Cohen. After 17 years of working as an investment banker, he started writing about Wall Street and what's going on behind the scenes. And in addition to 7 books on the New York Times bestsellers list, he writes monthly for Vanity Fair magazine about Wall Street. And he'll be coming up in just a little bit. But first, how did the markets do this week? Well, all the major averages closed higher on their final trading day of the week. The Dow Jones Industrial Average ended the week at 34,756. That was up 180 points for the day and up 0.6 of a point for the week. And the S&P 500 closed today at 4,229, up 37 points for the day and up just about almost 0.6 of a point for the week. And finally, the NASDAQ. They finished the week at 13,814, up almost 200 points for the day. And up for the week, about 0.5% for the week. The Dow Jones and the S&P 500 posted higher gains for the second straight week, and the NASDAQ posted its third straight weekly gain. And the NASDAQ had its best day since May 20th, and the S&P 500 had its best day since May the 24th. And Bitcoin, well, they closed for the week, ending today at $36,889. They dropped almost 4.5% for the day. Well, let's get to our guest tonight. William Cohen has had 6 books on the New York Times bestsellers list, ranging from Goldman Sachs' Money Machine to the Duke lacrosse team members' rape accusations. And he's written an investigative journalist monthly for Vanity Fair for Business, and most recently about GE's CEO and his excessive pay packages. Now, we're going to find out about that plus other topics as well. William Cohen and it's his name, and he's here with us tonight. So let's get right into it. Hi, Bill. For 17 years, you worked on Wall Street before becoming, before becoming a writer. Was it something, writing was something you always enjoyed doing?
Yeah, I decided I wanted to get a 99% pay cut and become a journalist. I had been a journalist before I went to Wall Street. I had a graduate degree from the Columbia School of Journalism, was a reporter on the daily paper, the afternoon paper in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I ended up getting a job on Wall Street in May of 1987 when literally all you had to do was fog a mirror to get a job on Wall Street at that time. And then that's when I started in September at GE Capital. And we can get to that later. And then a month later, of course, the stock market crashed 22.6% in one day, and Wall Street shuttered. And many of the people who I had graduated with from business school who had gotten jobs at investment banks lost those jobs, and GE Capital was sort of as strong as ever, so I actually lucked out.
In your latest piece in Vanity Fair, you write about GE, and in fact, we're going to talk about it a little bit also more, but you're writing a book about GE, and you talk about Larry Culp, who's the CEO and chairman of the board, who's now taken over, and he has gotten this humongous pay increase when counting in his stock options. Is this something that is normally done on Wall Street when stock options are underwater? The board recalculates them for the CEO and chairman?
In times when the stock market craps out, There's no question that CEOs appeal to their board of directors, or somehow mysteriously, as in the case of GE, or what they'd have us believe, that GE's independent board of directors voluntarily initiated a process by which they would recut Larry Culp's restricted stock package. However it happened, lo and behold, last August, Larry Culp ended up with a recut stock deal that generated for him $60 million worth of stock in December and another $60 million worth of stock in May, because he recut essentially the price increase that would have to happen for him to get those stock awards. And lo and behold, by the end of the year and last month, that happened twice in the space of 9 months.
Bill, a couple of weeks ago, maybe about 3 weeks ago, we had Bill George on, and Bill is the former CEO of Medtronic. He's also a professor at Harvard Business School, and we were discussing GE, and I brought up the fact that in the CEO, the chief executive officer, is in charge of the company, and the board is in charge of the CEO, and the chairman of the board is in charge of the board. But when you're both the CEO and the chairman, and if you have a problem if you're a board member and you have a problem with what is the CEO's doing, if you go to the chairman, it's the same person. Now, Bill George said that in Europe, that's not, those two jobs are usually separated, but at GE, they always had a habit, and I know of Jack Welch, Jeff Immelt, and so on, and now Larry Culp being one of the same. So when Larry Culp is the chairman of the board, who's in charge of the board, and also the CEO, it just always seems to me like a conflict of interest.
Well, it's absolutely a conflict of interest, but Bill George is quite right that in the United States, for whatever reasons, which have never been fully explicated, we like to have the CEO also be the chairman of the board. In Europe, again, he's quite right that it's often those two functions are separated, which they should be. In this country, we don't tend to do that, although there are certainly instances where that has happened, usually after there's been some sort of problem at the company. I think GE would have been much better off during the Immelt era if he weren't also the chairman of the board, especially at a board like GE, where at the time it was very prestigious to be on that board. They got paid a lot of money. There was a lot of cachet that went on being on that board, and so you didn't want to get kicked off the board. You didn't want to get voted off the board. You didn't want the board to put you in the penalty box, which did happen. So you generally went along with what he wanted, and that happened. That happens at boards all over the country, unfortunately.
And it's interesting about General Electric, because to me, General Electric, like AT&T, is sort of like the widows and orphans fund of long-lasting dividends. AT&T paid consistent dividends constantly. General Electric. In fact, for our viewers, we just last week celebrated, Wall Street celebrated the 125th anniversary of the Dow Jones. And I think 1896, they were the first one of the Dow components that came on, and they were on consistently, I think, since 1907. Well, up like in 2018, they were kicked out of the Dow because the stock price has gotten so bad. So General Electric is sort of a company that even those who are not in the stock market may have had GE stock because of the dividend yields.
Yeah, in fact, the GE paid dividends since the Great Depression, between the Great Depression in something like 1932 until Jeff Immelt had to cut the dividend after saying he wouldn't in 2009, and then cut it like 2/3, and then Larry is,
I see.
I believe, down to like a penny. And so the idea of GE and dividends is long gone.
Yeah. Got to ask you this one question too. I was the Wall Street Journal. I remember reading where what Jeff Immelt would do was have when he would fly from one location to another, he would have a second plane fly, and when the Wall Street Journal or when the reporter uncovered it, he said, I had no idea that there was a second plane that was flying with mine. And it always amazed me that he never looked out the window when he was flying at 20,000 feet and said, what's that other GE plane flying next to us doing?
I think that Jeff did know about the other plane. Why he said he didn't. Let's just give him, a pass on that one. But I think it arose out of the fact that Jeff was flying around the world. GE had operations in like 180 out of 195 countries. It had become a global business. Jeff spent, 300 days on the road a year. And there were instances where the plane that he was riding in broke down, and that sort of hindered his global travel. And I think if that happens once every 10 years, okay, no big deal. But I think there was one time day at Westchester Airport, and I think he got quite irritated. I mean, he was like, he's like an all business guy.
When you wrote the book House of Cards, it was dealing with Bear Stearns, and you really can't talk about Bear Stearns without their CEO was Ace Greenberg for years and years at the company.
Long time, and then Jimmy Kane.
And Jimmy Kane, and for doing that. Well, did you, when you were doing research on it, did you find out what about Jeffrey Epstein? First came into the Wall Street area, coming from teaching at a high school, and Ace Greenberg hired him. What was the reason why? Do you know of why he was hired, and also why he was fired?
He didn't talk to me for my book, although he later wrote his own book, and then he called me up and said he wished he had talked to me. A couple of nice lunches before he died. And I spent a lot of time with Jimmy Kane when I was writing that book. You have to understand that when that happened in March of 2008, and I spent the next 6 months researching it and then 3 months writing. I mean, that was that book got done in 9 months, which was some sort of minor miracle. The idea of talking about Jeffrey Epstein wasn't really, now it seems so obvious that if you'd only spent time, you could have gotten to the bottom of some of Jeffrey Epstein's behavior or why Bear Stearns hired the guy. If you'd only asked Jimmy Kane, yes. I mean, and Jimmy Kane, brought him up in conversations with me. But again, in 2008, the story of Bear Stearns was not Jeffrey Epstein. It was what the hell happened to this, prestigious bank that had never had a losing quarter 85 years of its existence until the fourth quarter of 2007. And, there was like a dead body on the floor, and my job quickly was to figure out how it got there.
Jeffrey Epstein, nobody didn't know who he was until even after his second conviction, even when he was arrested for the final time just a couple of years ago.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And, when he came back from Paris on his jet and got arrested at Teterboro, I think that's when, 90% of the people who now talk about him realized what he had been up to. Jimmy Kane brought him up, and he was sort of like lurking in the background. But I thought I can't go down the Jeffrey rabbit hole right now. I have to stay focused on what the hell happened to this firm.
Was it, when talking about Bear Stearns, was it a lot to do that the reason Bear Stearns went under was around 1998, 1999 with long-term capital? When long-term capital went under, all the other investment banks kind of chipped in to kind of help bail it out, except Bear Stearns said that they were not going to be putting in. And then jump forward now back to 2008, then with the housing crisis, was it the memory that all these other investment firms, including the federal government, said, you know what, back in 1999, you didn't want to help out for long-term capital, now comes payback?
But I will say that there was an element of that, yes. all the other Wall Street banks stepped up to help bail out long-term capital management. Bear Stearns had been the clearing bank for long-term capital management, so that required Bear Stearns to put up a fair amount of capital and have capital at risk. So I think Jimmy Kane's view was, hey, we've already contributed because we've been, we were their clearing institution. We had put up capital to execute their trades, and so we've kind of made our contribution. And we may lose money here on the trading aspect of long-term capital management, so we don't want to pony up.
I understand.
Which was,
Bill,
a legitimate argument on his part, but pissed off the rest of Wall Street. And so then when Bear needed their help 10 years later,
they
there's
weren't
just
there.
no way.
We're going to take a break, Bill, right now. We'll be right back. We're talking with William Cohen, author of a number of books. He's also a writer with Vanity Fair, former Wall Street banker, and we'll have more with Bill Cohen right after this. If you're just joining us, we're talking with William Cohen, and Bill is an author of a number of different best-selling New York Times best-selling books. He's writing a book right now on General Electric, and also with the number of articles I'm sure you may have read him in Vanity Fair and other things as well. Bill, one of the recent articles you had was about Les Moonves with Viacom CBS, and for our viewers, Les Moonves was the CEO, was the chief of CBS, and he did not want to have CBS remerge with Viacom, and he was very popular and, from what I understand, and powerful at CBS until there was a number of sexual harassment scandals that came out, and he was abruptly fired from there. What did your research uncover about Les Moonves?
Oh, well, that's a very broad question.
I'll phrase it this way. Just this past month, well, we're now in June, so in May, it went to arbitration that Les Moonves wanted his $120 million pay package. Viacom, CBS said, no, we're not going to pay you the $120 million because you were fired for cause. And just a few weeks back, they dropped the arbitration where Viacom CBS gets to keep their $120 million, and Les Moonves gets zero, which to me, and am I reading between the lines that there was more information that was coming out that he did not want, that he said, okay, look, you win, I'm not going to continue?
Les was fired. He then sought arbitration to get the $120 million. He believed he was entitled to via his contract. Somehow that report, draft of that report, got leaked to the New York Times, and that was reported on in the pages of the New York Times. And eventually, I wrote a piece about this maybe a couple of months ago about how actually it had leaked out of the law offices of Covington and Burling reason. And that one of the women who was written about in the Times, she had an expectation of confidentiality, and the fact leaked to the New York Times gave her a cause of action. They settled with her for, I don't know, something like $10 or $15 million. And then as a result of that, leak, again, Les Moonves felt that his confidentiality had been violated. So while he got zero from CBS, he got something like $20 million from Covington and Burling. So this leak out of their law firm cost them like $30 or $40 million. So this So he did get $20 million out of Covington and Burling, which I believe he's going to give to charities.
I
So he's
understand.
not going to get any himself. But I think the way this whole thing got wrapped up and settled is that Covington and Burling, because this leak originated from their law offices, has had to pony up a lot of money to both a woman who was mentioned in the Times article and to Les Moon. CBS didn't pay him anything, but they basically either forced or required or put the squeeze on Covington and Burling to pay up because of this leak.
I understand. Bill, we've just got about a minute more left to go. The company Endeavor became an IPO. Now, Endeavor is an IPO, an initial public offering, publicly traded company now, and they own a lot of live entertainment events, such as the UFC, the mixed martial arts. They also do sports and entertainment representation, and it's run by a guy named Ari Emanuel. Do you think with lockdowns coming out of people coming back to work and people wanting to go out, do you think now is a good time that Endeavor finally went public?
Ari Emanuel is an ambitious guy. His brother's Rahm Emanuel, who's chief of staff to Obama and mayor of Chicago, and their third brother is a prominent doctor. So these guys are very smart, very aggressive. Ari has been a long-time Hollywood agent. He's wanted to take this thing public for a long time. He tried in September of 2019. That failed, and he, tried again this spring and pulled it off. And he took it public, and he and his partner Patrick Whitesell are now worth about $1 billion in Endeavor stock. So he did it. He pulled it off. I didn't think he'd be able to.
With the GE book coming out, when is it hoping to be published?
A year from now, Father's Day 2022.
Thanks a lot, Bill. Appreciate it. Well, in other business news this week, J.P. Morgan stated that they will resume political giving, though they will be freezing out Republicans who contested the last presidential election. J.P. Morgan was among many corporations that halted their political giving following the January 6th Capitol riot. Following a review, the Morgan Bank will this month resume giving through its Political Action Committee, or PAC, but will continue its freezing of donations to a handful of Republican lawmakers who contested the presidential election returns, according to a J.P. Morgan spokesman. Other big financial companies that paused donations have slowly resumed their spending through their PACs, and Morgan Stanley's Political Action Committee, as well as the American Bankers Association, one of the biggest in the country, has also started giving again, according to federal records. And the Labor Department released their monthly jobs report, and it wasn't up to expectations. May's payroll report was not enough for the labor market to keep pace with an overall economy that is heating up as the pandemic continues to ease. Payrolls grew by 559,000 last month, according to the Department of Labor, but they were expecting numbers closer to 800,000. The unemployment rate fell to 5.8%. Now, leisure and hospitality did pick up almost 300,000 jobs, as well as manufacturing added 23,000 jobs. Retail and construction lost, though, in May. Possibly such a loss last month in construction. Besides companies needing labor, the cost of lumber has drastically increased, adding extra cost to a new home. Nearly half of small business owners reported having unfilled job openings in May. And we'll be right back right after this. Well, if you've got a question about finance or a comment about the show, we'd love to hear from you. You can write us at andre@wallstreetwrapup.info. Keep it pithy or concise, and we'd be glad to answer your questions. And now we'll look ahead for next week. But first, on this day, June the 4th, in 1919, Congress passed the 19th Amendment. What did it do? We'll have the answer for you in just a minute. On this day, June the 4th, in 1919, Congress passed the 19th Amendment. But what did it do? It gave the women's right to vote. It was passed on this day by Congress and then sent to the states to be ratified 102 years ago today. Well, Facebook has said Donald Trump will remain banned on the social media site for another 2 years until January of 2023. Facebook originally, a few weeks ago, referred the ban to its oversight board, saying that given the significance of the suspension, we think it is important for the board to review it and reach an independent judgment on whether it should be upheld. But Facebook's oversight board decided last month to uphold the company's choice to suspend Donald Trump's Facebook and Instagram accounts. Now, its decision, however, the board noted that Facebook needed to reassess how it moderates the speech of political leaders, clearly outline those rules for the public, and determine just how long is appropriate for the users to be suspended. Facebook emphasized may and not shall when referring to a suspension to being lifted in January of 2023. So the social media giant may decide to continue with the ban until after the presidential elections of 2024. And finally, now that we've gotten past Memorial Day, today is National Donut Day. The first Friday of June is annually celebrated as National Donut Day in the United States. Since 1938, this holiday is a continuation of Donut Day, when members of the Salvation Army provided donuts and coffee to service members during the First World War. The top favorite type of donut in the United States is the glazed, followed by the chocolate glazed and the Boston cream. But I bet you already knew that. Well, even Elvis Presley recorded his only commercial endorsement of his career advertising Southern-made donuts. See, back in 1954, while he was performing in the Louisiana Hayride, he enjoyed eating Southern-made donuts. Well, he agreed to do a commercial for the company and even was singing their jingle. By the way, his payment for his only commercial endorsement during his career was a dozen glazed donuts. Of course, this was prior to his longtime manager, Colonel Parker, coming into the picture, and things changed quite a bit since then. Well, that's our show, and we hope you've enjoyed it for Friday, June the 4th, 2021. Remember, you can follow us on Facebook and WYES.org. So thank you for joining us and allowing us into your homes tonight. Have a great weekend and have a donut if it's not too late. And in fact, if it is, we replay the show on Sunday mornings at 8 a.m. So have a donut then while watching the replay on Sunday. So for Wall Street Wrap-Up, I'm Andre Laborde. Remember, money never sleeps. Have a good night.
Sponsored by New Orleans Distillers, creators of fine spirits and liqueurs. Through dedication to science, art, and passion, blends of tradition and flavor emerge. For you, always locally crafted. New Orleans Distillers, classically Southern.